You're listening to Scar Survivor Hour on Power 95, bringing awareness, hope, and healing for survivors of child sexual abuse.
Welcome, everyone, to our Scar Survivor Hour radio show. I am Debbie Ray Rivers, and I'm the Executive Director of SCARS, Saving Children and Revealing Secrets, a charity whose mission is to reduce the risk of child sexual abuse in our Bermuda community. I'm also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and a mother of 2 survivors. Our show is co-hosted with Dr. Alicia Hancock, a SCARS board member, a friend, and a clinical psychologist with over a decade of wisdom in child sexual abuse. You know, Survivor Hour is another platform to spread awareness and be an advocate and a voice for those who have been sexually molested as well as their affected families. Today, Dr. Hancock and I will be sharing valuable information that could protect a child from an online predator. If you are a parent or a guardian of a child, this show is for you. If you're a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a godparent, please, we ask that you share what you hear today with the loved ones in your life, the loved ones that have little children. Today's show will be all about the dark side of AI. And trust me, there is a dark side. A recent study found only 61% of participants could tell the difference between AI-generated people versus a real human, according to Science Daily. And these are adults. Now imagine children. According to Child Rescue Coalition, artificial intelligence AI has become a powerful force, transforming the way we live, communicate, and even raise our children. AI has brought incredible innovations and developments, but with it, it brings dangers and serious risks to our children's safety online. At the end of 2024, myself and some of our SCARS board members, staff, and our marketing team from the Total Group took part in an AI 101 training session. That's what it's called, AI 101. And it was truly eye-opening and, quite frankly, scary. Today, we are going to discuss the dark side of AI, what parents can do to combat AI risks. Joining Dr. Hancock and I in the studio, we have 2 incredibly wise individuals who are aware of the dangers that are posed to children as it comes to online safety and what we can do to prevent it. I will be welcoming shortly Priya Singh. Priya is a communications strategist and a managing director of Niche Communications Bermuda. She facilitated this AI 101 training session I talked about earlier, and she was amazing. She is passionate about the protection of children. I also am going to welcome Detective Inspector Kenton Trott. Detective Trott is the officer in charge of the Vulnerable Persons Unit, the Vulnerable Persons Unit of the Bermuda Police Service. And we are very grateful to have his wisdom in the studio today. The Bermuda Police Service have always been supportive of the SCARS work in our community. They take child protection seriously. Before we get into our important discussion, I just want to remind everyone about our broadcasting rules. This show contains sensitive information, and it's intended for adults only. This is a sensitive topic. When calling into the show, we just ask callers, please do not mention your name or a perpetrator's name. Remember, we have no way of confirming your testimony. You can share, absolutely, but no names mentioned. If you wish to call with any questions today, please call 292-9595. This show is also not meant for personal attack. It's meant to educate and empower and advocate for the precious children in this country. Please remember, we are not experts in the law. We can answer questions about surviving childhood sexual abuse and how trauma affects victims of child sexual abuse, and Dr. Hancock can do that. Absolutely no attack on any lawyer, judge, or magistrate. We really are grateful for you respecting this. If you are a survivor, though, and you wish to be a guest on our show, we would love to have you. Our hope is to eventually reduce the stigma in our community. And we believe by sharing lived experiences, we can continue to dismantle the silence around this topic. If you have a childhood story of child sexual abuse, your story is vitally important. If you are a survivor and you're hesitant about sharing your story on air, we totally understand. As a child who experienced sexual harm, your voice and your ability to say no as an adult, as a child, that was taken from you. But now you're an adult. And so it's okay to say no. We totally understand that. But if you are ready to share your story, please call the SCARS office at 297-2277. If we are not in the office due to being out for a training or a meeting, please leave a message. Or you can email me at Debbie, 4 letters, DEBI, at scars.bm. Okay, so I do want to start by, begin by saying, before I did this show, thought about this show, I was clueless about AI and how it worked. I really was. I read an article in the Royal Gazette late last year, and it was written by a wise young man named Christian Garay. And his article was titled, Demystifying AI, A Beginner's Guide to Buzzwords. And I have to tell you, it really helped me wrap my simple head around what AI is. He described the overall concept of creating machines that can think and act like humans. It's the magic behind personal assistants such as Siri. It's giving data to computers and allowing them to find patterns. He explained that it's like how Spotify recommends your next favorite song. And I have to tell you, that's when the light bulb went off in my simple mind. And when I came into a training room with Priya, she helped me and our SCARS team see the benefits of AI from a business perspective. But we also, while we were doing that training, we also recognized the risks to children. But I do want to start with Detective Inspector Kenton Trott. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited. Alicia and I were just truly excited to have your wisdom sitting at this table today. I read that reports of online child sexual exploitation and abuse has increased from 16.9 million to 32 million in just the past 3 years, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's scary, Detective Inspector. That is really scary. I'm going to say it again. From 16.9 million to 32 million. Has the Bermuda Police Service seen an increase in cybercrime?
I mean, generally, and good afternoon, Bermuda. Generally speaking, there is an increase in cybercrime, and I think what's also happening is that as there is more awareness, people are more likely to report. So what we want to do is encourage people that if you think in any way, shape, or form that a cybercrime has occurred or is occurring, that to report it. Because one of the things is originally, when it first started becoming more popular and, with the age of technology, people were a little bit hesitant to report it. So, something might happen, a cybercrime might occur, they might just keep it to themselves or tell one of their friends, oh, I got scammed out of this, or this happened online, or that happened online. But what we really want to do is encourage people to report it because, it might sound like a bad thing, but then the number of reports will increase. However, it gives us the opportunity to investigate them, to find out more information, and to actively deal with it. Because if we don't know, we can't assist. So that's one of the big things that I will encourage people. It has risen, but we want to encourage people to continue to report it, continue to, let the police know. You can call 211. You can report it online. There's so many different ways you can do it now. So I would say that, it has increased, but we encourage people to continue to report.
I love that. And what is the email address that they would email if they want to email something?
So you can go on the Bermuda Police portal.
Okay.
So police.bm, and then you can go through the portal and report it that way. Also, it's 211 at bps.bm, or even just call the police, 295-0011, and obviously if it's the emergency, 911.
Yes.
But there's so many different ways you can
make a report. I love that.
And you can even show up at any station. That's another way as well. Just literally just walk into the door at any police station.
Yes. And I've done that recently, and they're so helpful in there. Now, is there a division within the Bermuda Police Service that coordinates the prevention or combating of cybercrime, specifically exploitation and abuse involving children? Which department is that?
Well, that would be my department. So the Vulnerable Persons Unit. It's a team of us that work together. I mean, just the other day, we did a presentation at one of our local primary schools.
Yes.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. You know, the children were engaging. They learned a lot. I even saw one of the little boys a couple of days later at another event, and he remembered me, and
Wow.
we were having a conversation. So I
Wow.
think that's one of the big things we're trying to do, because education is so important. These tools are at our disposal, but we want to make sure that the children are equipped and know how to use them properly.
Yeah. So if you're a leader of an organization, of a youth serving organization, and you're listening to this show, we encourage you to ask the Bermuda Police Service. I think the DPP were with you, right,
Yep,
at that.
yep, DPP was with us, correct.
I know that was at a primary school, but we would love if all the primary schools had you, so that
Yeah.
they can, be educated
Yeah.
and not be afraid of the police, not
Yeah.
be afraid. That's what we want to do,
Exactly.
right? Is break down those walls of fear when it
Exactly.
comes to the police,
Exactly,
right?
and that's one of the things that we are doing. I mean, I've newly taken back over in this unit, and that was one of my first things, because I was also a part of Cyber Tips, which was a government-run program.
Yes.
And we're trying to push that similar thing. I mean, obviously that's another topic for another day, but what we are trying to do is make sure that our children get the information that they need. And another thing that we do as well is we do presentations to like PTAs,
Love it.
to other type of youth groups. It doesn't just have to be for children. We have presentations that is designed for parents and educators, guardians, anybody that has, contact with children, and also for the children themselves. So we kind of have two separate things that we can do.
Wow.
Because obviously we a lot of times the parents are a little bit older. You give an iPad to a child now who's under 5, they know how to work it without any issues at all.
Yeah.
Whereas 30 years ago, iPads didn't even exist.
Right.
So obviously the generation gap. So what we want to do is try to educate everybody at the level that they're at.
Yes. And let me ask you, what are a list of do's and don'ts that you could share when someone suspects a cybercrime against a child has occurred or may be occurring? What are some tips that you can give to parents or guardians of do's and don'ts if they suspect a cybercrime?
I mean, one of the first things we tell people is that, especially if it's involving your children, is that don't make them a victim again by, we're parents. Your child comes and reports something to you, you say, oh, give me that phone, or whatever the case might be. But they're coming to you, so be receptive to them and understand that they are a victim and they don't need to be victimized again. We don't do it on purpose. We do it as loving parents and, we want to protect our children. However, what we want to encourage parents to do is listen to what they're saying, understand what they're saying, and then come and report it to us. So the most important thing is to not delete anything
Right.
from the phone. As best you can, take screenshots. One of the other things we recommend is that if you can, to put the phone in airplane mode. Obviously, if it's a child's device, that's more likely that you can do it. But if they're using your device, you might need your device to make phone calls. You might need your device for work. So obviously you probably can't put it in airplane mode. We also want people to kind of gather as much information as possible about whatever it is that you've noticed is taking place. Record the times, the dates, and the facts about these incidents. It might be a one-off incident. It might be a series of incidents. It might be different things happening that, your child thought that they could handle it. And they come to you a week later and they had 10 different conversations with this person, and maybe they've lost money, or maybe they've shared some images that they should not necessarily share. So we want you to keep a record of all of that type of stuff when you come to us, so that we can assist you. And even if you don't do any of that, just come to the police for help, because we don't want to say, okay, well, I don't want somebody to listen to this and say, okay, I have to do this first, I have to do this first, I have to do that first. At the end of the day, if something happens, you could be driving across Front Street in your car and your child says something to you and you realize, hey, wait, a cybercrime has happened, or wait, I don't feel comfortable with this. You could just drive straight to the police station. You don't have to do any of these steps if it's that urgent. But if you're at home and he says that to you, you can kind of say, okay, cool, well, let me at least, put in airplane mode so that nothing gets deleted from the phone. Because obviously, with the age of technology, somebody can send a message and delete it from their side, and it deletes off your phone as well.
Right.
So those are some of the things that kind of protect it, because that will help us to identify what offenses have occurred, that we will have the actual information that is required.
Yes.
And then another thing we kind of recommend and discuss is to always have these open conversations with your children. A lot of times we, as parents, I'm a father of 3, so I know how it is to want to protect your child. But the best way to protect them is to communicate with them, is to explain to them what happens, and even sometimes when we give our presentations, sometimes I've seen if it's parents and children's present, I've seen kind of parents' eyes open and the children are sitting there, we might say something, and the children are like, oh yeah, we know all about that. And the parents' eyes open wide because they're like, how does my child know that? But that's why we encourage to have those open communication, because trust me, these children know a lot more than you think they might know.
Yeah.
So that's a really big factor, because you would want them to come to you. What we
Yes.
don't want is that a child is afraid to tell their parent because they don't want to get in trouble, which is a natural thing as well. But the more open conversations you have, the more communication you have, the more you tell them and teach them about this, then they'll be more likely to say, hey mom, this happened online today. Or hey mom or dad, this happened online today. So
Yeah.
just having that open communication is a really big thing.
Yeah.
Because there are some very dark people on the other side of that phone.
Yeah, exactly. And your reaction is going to determine whether they're going to continue telling you information,
Exactly.
right? No shame, no judgment.
Exactly.
Just be grateful that
Yeah.
they're sharing that with you, because that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, definitely. And
Wow.
then one of the other things that questions we get sometimes is, should the person or parent respond to whoever the offender is? So that is obviously sometimes parents do it instinctively. Sometimes parents, oh, who's that? I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, or whatever the case might be. But sometimes that could be detrimental. So obviously we don't want to say not to respond to them, because sometimes if the parent is now got possession of the device, the parent can kind of have the conversation go a bit further so they can get more information. So it's not a do or don't. It's we encourage you to come to us as quickly as possible, and then we can assist to kind of progress the
Facilitate
investigation.
that. Yeah, facilitate the investigation.
Yeah. And then, like we said, the best advice I give, if as soon as it happens, as quickly as possible, report it to the police so that we can intervene as early as possible.
Yeah. It's great with devices, because sometimes that's evidence, right?
Yeah, that's evidence right there. Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to
Yeah.
child sexual abuse with no evidence.
Exactly.
It's really hard.
Exactly.
It's really hard to prove. I love that. Thank you
Exactly.
so
You're
much
very
for that.
welcome.
Thank you
You're very welcome.
for your wisdom. So Priya, welcome to our show. We're so happy to have you. As I said, we did our SCARS team and board members and our marketing team. We did this AI 101 training session with you, and like I said, boy, were my eyes opened. And, you helped our team, really help our team understand this, the benefits from it, but also helped us recognize that there are risks. So I'm going to ask you to define to the audience, what is AI?
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for having me. And it was a pleasure speaking with your board and your team, and just getting ready for the presentation. It really opened my eyes to the dark side of AI, right? I'm coming from it from a communications point of view. I see the potential. I see the efficiencies. This sort of made me put on my mom hat and said, hey, all of this is great, but we need checks and balances, because it really is the Wild West out there. Yeah. And so AI can be everything and anything. It is artificial intelligence. It is the process where we have trained machines to think and respond like humans. And if you think, okay, well, AI is not in my child's life, or it's not in my life, think again, because it's sort of been integrated into every aspect of our life, from when we get up, when our Apple phone wakes us up, to our GPS as we drive our kids to school, to downloading a Sargasso app to order some food, to what we get recommended on Netflix. It's all AI, and it's monitoring, and it's tracking. And rather than saying, let's turn it all off and it's bad, let's find ways to use it responsibly and teach our children to be aware of the issues of safety.
And the risks,
And the
right?
risks, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are the main dangers every parent should know as we think about risks?
Right. So, maybe we start with the benefits. Kids are using AI for educational tools, social media, to keep in touch with people, for gaming, to create content, as well as children who might think or learn differently. Assistive technology, right, is allowing individuals with physical or learning disabilities to sort of integrate. And let's not discount how amazing it is. But with that, I think all parents should be aware that children are at risk for data exploitation, right? AI collects and analyzes their data often without clear consent. Can an 8-year-old playing Roblox give proper consent? I don't think so. This creates opportunities for misuse, such as identity theft and unauthorized sharing of personal information. When you're pressing I consent to this video game, you don't know where the data is going on the other side. And so that's a large concern is the data exploitation, but also the unintended exposure. The AI algorithms will sometimes inadvertently expose children to inappropriate content, like pornography, explicit pictures. I see everyone nodding, but also could connect them with predators, right? You don't know who they're playing with on the other end. I mean, it might be completely innocent on their part. They're playing with another 8-year-old, living in Canada. But again, and that's where, we can put in laws, we can put in rules, we can lean hard on these companies putting these games out. But at the end, it really does come down to the parents, right? They're our kids, they're our responsibility, and we need to, as a community, work to this. And then the third concern would be the tracking and manipulation of this data. So AI tracks online behavior, and it tailors the content that feeds into the kids, that comes onto their screen, that could lead to emotional dependency or unhealthy habits. I'll leave it to the experts to speak to it more, but talking about emotional addiction, repetitive behaviors, but I'll defer to you. But those, in my opinion, would be the three major concerns that parents should be thinking about when and if they decide to let their children explore this realm.
Yeah, and I know you're a mom, and you have your mom hat on and your AI hat on, and you're advocate for children in this community. You're so passionate about it. How do we engage in open conversations with our children just about this topic and about AI?
Absolutely. I think we have to, just going on. I think we have to have a balanced approach to technology. We can't tell them social media is bad. We can't tell them AI is bad. But we do have to start a dialogue, have a constant dialogue about, as parents, it is our right to be able to see their phones. When they're using their devices, use it in a common area. And, if something happens that they feel uncomfortable with, come tell us as parents. We're not going to be angry. So I think so much of it is based on just creating a dialogue of trust. But I think I'd also recommend, and I'm not an expert, but all the research says to delay smartphone and social media use for as much as possible, right? You have legislation in Australia where I think you have to be 16 years old to, prohibits children from under 16 from using social media without verified parental consent. How amazing would it be if we could do something here? So let's, let's push as parents to implement social media phone-free school policies. I know a couple of the private schools have no phones allowed during the day, but some of the other schools in Bermuda, you're allowed to have your phone in school. And not only is it a learning distraction, but I think it also is a safety issue when you have all of these children on social media.
Yeah.
How are checks and balances?
There are, and how are they communicating with each other? I remember. My daughter is now 31, and we would go out to dinner. I'd go visit her in college, and we'd go out to dinner, and all the cell phones had to go in a basket on the table.
Absolutely.
Nobody was allowed to touch their cell phone. And the first person who did, they had to pay for dinner for all 8 of us. So you put in some consequences and say, because you want that, communication not to stop. Your eyes in front of a device all the time. So I love that.
And I think as parents, we have to model healthy digital behavior. And I know we're all busy in that just-in-time sort of day. You're cooking dinner and you're on your phone and you're doing all of this. But children see and model what we do as grown-ups. So maybe I love your idea. Let's just all put the phones in a basket. And so let's model healthy digital behavior. Let's create a safe space for children to talk to their parents if there's an issue and stay informed, right? There's so much emerging. I can't even stay on top of all of the new stuff coming in. But as the best you can, I find there's a website called commonsensemedia.org.
Write it down, everyone. commonsensemedia.org.
And it's sort of peer-reviewed, doctors, specialists, everything. And they will sort of rate video games based on violence, sexual nudity, appropriateness, TV shows, even children's books. And parents can also give feedback, and children can. There's a paid version and an unpaid version. But I always go there before I say yes to any video game that my child downloads or social media app. And it's a not-for-profit run out of the U.S.
Is it preventable? Is if a child is on, how do we prevent the dangers of AI?
I mean, I think it all varies what they're on and the checks and balances. But I think the best we can hope for is to give them the tools to be aware and to feel comfortable coming to us. But then it all comes down to, should a child who's 8 years old be on a game that's designed for, or an app that's designed for a child that's 16?
Yeah. Or posting pictures, because we don't know where that picture is going to go.
And it breaks my heart because it's become so normalized to sort of send inappropriate photos. Over 20% of students in high school in the U.S. are aware of explicit photos of their peers on the internet.
Yeah.
Like 20%, that's huge, and that's heartbreaking. And those photos are going to be there forever, never mind how they'll be, could be manipulated by AI in the future.
Scary.
It's scary. And these just
or even manipulated by their peers.
Yeah. Which is happening. We haven't even touched on deep fakes used to blackmail children. So children will send an image, it'll then be manipulated, and the predator will say, you know what, I'm going to release this to all your friends or your parents if you don't do X or Y or send me more photos. And that could be a predator on the other side of the world, or it could be someone down the road. That's the thing with in this digital world, we don't really know who it is. And it's whack-a-mole, right? Just as soon as you stop one more quote, and then I'm going to stop. The Internet Watch Foundation found that within a 1-month period, over 3,500 new AI-generated photos of children in sexually explicit in scenes of abuse were uploaded in a single month.
Say that again. How many?
3,500 AI-generated images in a single month on the dark web forum. And it's heartbreaking for me, I know I keep using that word, for officers and the police, because now you're chasing ghosts. Like, not only are you chasing the actual predators and abusers, so much of your resources are probably spent, again, deep fakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen that, Inspector?
Yeah, it's starting to grow here in Bermuda, and then one of the things that, as you said, is it's very difficult to kind of combat is because, like you said, it just pops up. You don't know where they could be here, they could be in China, they could be in wherever around the world, and I think one of the difficult parts, and I know we're very we love social media, we love to post, we love to think, and even for me, I mean, on my social media, you would never see any pictures of my children, only because I am so afraid of something happening. Yeah. So even my children say, "Oh, Daddy, how come you do?" I said, "Guys, Daddy doesn't post you ever," because of the fact that even before it became deep fakes, and even before AI got as known as it is now, I was always conscious of it because I've worked in these departments for years.
You see the
danger, and I know, and I can see the danger. It could be your child's face on somebody else's body completely, and then a picture's going around. It's not actually your child's body, but it's your child's face on that body. So it's hard to have these conversations, and obviously some parents say, okay, it's fine, and you can put parameters in place, like you can have privacy settings on so only your friends can see the photos of your children, or whatever the case might be. But I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything to inadvertently put my children in harm's way, because our children are already in harm's way every single day. And it's a difficult thing because it's right there. You can't go anywhere without technology nowadays. Every single place you go, there are some places, even I just came back from overseas, and there are some places that do not even accept cash. So how do you think that transaction's being dealt with? Via technology. Right. So everywhere we go, it's right there in our face, and I think it's just making sure that we have the tools, we have the education, we have the training to know how to best protect ourselves and our children and our young people.
Yeah. With technology constantly changing so rapidly, you're always going to be at risk of, people are out there actually trying to break through the firewalls, trying to break through the parameters that we try to put in place. So
yeah. What are some of the detrimental effects, Dr. Hancock, on a child who has been sextorted?
Well, so sextorted is basically a form of your you're threatening somebody to release pictures, release vision, anything that, could be considered like things like pornography. And so what ends up happening with kids is, one of the most common things is obviously their anxiety is going to go up. If they're aware that it's something bad is happening, then their anxiety is going to spike. And so their nervous system then will start to become dysregulated. Cortisol levels, as we know, is a stress hormone. So, it can cause, scars, right? It can cause a lot of long-term damage to their psyche, and, potentially cause a lot of, cause emotional consequences, social consequences. So it's trying to instill in them that it's very dangerous is difficult. That's why, we can't rely on kids to set limits for themselves.
Right.
We have to set, their limits are what we set for them. So, for instance, children, they're not naive in content, but they're naive in the consequences and the long-term consequences.
Yes.
Because they don't have the capacity to emotionally attach themselves based on lack of experience to what the long-term consequences are of just sending a picture. It takes 2 seconds. Can have lasting, chronic, long-term effects. Teaching them that, you can't erase anything ever. Even if you erase it from your computer, it's the web.
there.
The web is
Yep.
the world beyond. So it can cause a lot of emotion, can cause a lot of, mental health issues. Like it can lead into anxiety, can lead into eating disorders. It can lead into depression, hyper-focused, can cause a PTSD reaction. So their fight or flight, the mechanism, it just gets activated and is constantly activated.
Fear.
A lot
fear
of fear.
going to school because the child might not know how many other people have
Seen it.
that photo.
Absolutely.
Right? So they're just constantly...
The social consequence, and now they have to, they're now identified as that person, and the
Yes.
effects and the impact that picture has had on them for the
And an
forever.
island like Bermuda, it's so
Oh.
small that even if you were to change schools, right? I've heard stories.
Oh, yeah.
The pictures are at the next school
Yes.
before the child even finishes transferring over.
And let's really think about this child and what they're going through. They're not going to want to go to school. They're not going to want to see anybody, and that can lead to suicidal ideation, thinking about I don't want to live anymore. Nobody cares about me. Everybody has seen this. I mean, it can cause such detrimental effects on a child.
Absolutely.
I really think we should be teaching this in school, the safety. I mean, even more than is
Yeah,
already
yeah,
done.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
everyone's
Yep.
doing, but we are really on the foothills of AI technology, and it's evolving so quickly. And if we thought, we're just seeing now the effects of social media, this is like social media.
Yeah.
Again, I defer to the experts, but let's work closely with maybe PTAs and schools. And I know the PIPA legislation sort of kicked in
Yes.
January 1st, so maybe there's an overlay where we talk about privacy and consent. I have a 15-year-old boy. To his point, when Facebook started out and he was little, every photo was being posted because I wanted all of my friends to see my
Yep.
adorable baby, and he's going to cringe now if he hears me on the radio. But I was taking photos for his 15th birthday, and he's like, "Don't post it on social media." I was like, "Yeah, but and he's like, "I don't consent."
Wow.
And
love
I
that.
was just like, okay, good. I'm doing something. But we have to tell kids, and they can say that.
Yes.
They can say that to everyone. And just because a school or an organization that the sports team says they have to sign a waiver for consent, they don't have to.
No.
They don't.
No,
they
they
control
don't.
their images. And
Yeah.
so I'm hoping with more people becoming aware of the privacy legislation and stuff like that, it'll trickle down for families and parents. So, you know what? No, they don't. People don't have rights on your images, and even if you gave them once, you can pull back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and the earlier that you kind of educate children, the better, because by the time they get onto an iPad and there are very little limitations, then you have soon enough you have an addiction. You have an addiction to finding your own self-worth through likes and streams and all. I mean, we could go back like layer after layer and in terms of the damage, but it all starts there. Like, what does being on social media mean to your child? Do they at the point where they're so addicted that they require external variables to to feed their ego and their self-esteem.
So, doctor, I'm curious. Like, are certain children more predisposed to sort of social media AI addiction, or is it the amount of exposure that might, or is it like a specific incident that might be a tipping point?
Well, typically, I mean, so you have variables such as, you know, if there's an abusive household or there's neglect, you know, if there's any trauma or just kind of internal chaos, and the child's left to their own devices, you know, they're going to look for something to feel a sense of importance, sense of belongingness. So those are kind of risk factors, you know, on top of kind of already having low self-esteem. You know, so kids that are on social media are looking for stimulation, whether it be to feed their ego or they're just, you know, highly stimulated. So even a high intellectual kid is going to struggle to find stimulation in a regular environment. So they're going to look to constantly feed that stimulation through things like AI and technology.
Or fulfill their self-worth. So
Definitely.
then they're thinking, well, if I send this, as you know, my body looks pretty, and someone's going to tell me how great I look, and
Yeah, and what they don't realize is it's actually causing more anxiety, because then you require it, and so the minute that you become hypersensitive, so the minute you don't get a like, or you don't get as many as you used to, you then start questioning whether or not you're good enough. You know, so it feeds the addiction of what, you know, and again, depending on what kids need. So if they're in need of feeling loved, or nurtured, etc., they're going to look for some way to get
For
that.
validation. And,
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah,
And the way to prevent that a lot of times is, if you have when your family system, create family time. Create the more time you spend as a family, as kids, where they do feel special, they feel like they belong. They're not going to look for it externally in a place where they may not get it, or from somebody that's you know, on the other side of the web trying to groom them.
yeah. And, you know, you raised also, and thank you for all of that great information, Dr. Hancock. You know, you raised a good point also, Priya, about are our laws strong enough, you know, for us to really combat these online abuses against children. Although it wasn't an AI case, we did see a case where a predator got 11 years for contacting teenage girls, you know, via Facebook, including extortion, making, accessing, and distributing child pornography. But I did reach out to our Attorney General and Minister of Justice, the Honorable Kim Wilkerson, asking about cases of AI in Bermuda. And she quickly responded, and I was grateful for that. And she said there have been no criminal complaints in relation to AI in Bermuda. So that's a good thing so far. But, you know, I want to read a quote. But that doesn't mean that we don't start writing this legislation when it hits our shores.
And it doesn't mean it's not being reported.
And it's
right?
Correct.
And that's another great point,
Yeah.
Priya.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it means they haven't had any cases, the police, you know, the Attorney General, DPP, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. And so we want to be ahead of the game.
Yeah.
You know, I want to read a quote from an amazing organization called Thorn, the CEO of Thorn. This is a quote from Thorn, and look it up, parents, if you've never heard of this organization. They are fighting for our children all around the world. But they said every child deserves to explore and learn online without fear. To make that possible, the tech industries, the policymakers, and the parents must work together to ensure digital spaces are designed with robust protections against predators.
100%.
Wow.
Right? Because we know they exist.
Yep.
And so this is a 360 approach. Everybody has to do their part to make sure that our children are safe, because they have a right to be online and to research data, you know, and to watch fun games and, you know, fun movies. And this is just...
Yeah. It's our responsibility as grown-ups to put these checks and balances.
Yep.
It
in.
is.
Yeah. I love everything about Thorn. I think such a great resource for parents.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you know, we have work to do, and we as parents have an obligation to make sure our children are safe and to make sure that we build this relationship with them, so that we have that dialogue. And like you said, with your kids, Chief Inspector Trott, you know, they know that you already know the dangers out there, right? Daddy being a policeman, and understanding that. But, you know, being a parent is hard work. I mean, it is not easy. And predators are getting wiser. And now to think about AI, it can be fake. I mean,
Or you could have an individual that is grooming 3 different children at the same time, just using AI, right? So it's
because they can get in contact with their friends through their
or they could be
devices.
talking. They could be using like a chat GPT to be speaking to 3 children at one time, right? And then the algorithms also allow individuals to identify children who might be more vulnerable.
Yep.
Like you said, situations of chaos or, other which makes them even more vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah.
scary stuff.
It really is. Yeah.
I mean, and Priya knows when I went into the class, I was like, everything was, I was high alert because just the word artificial it didn't feel good with me. And I know I have to get used to this stuff, but I don't have the buy-in yet on it. Even with scars, I can't imagine having AI write emotion on how, important this child sexual abuse is. But I mean, you could just, type something in ChatGPT and something will come out, but
it'll lack the human touch, right?
Exactly.
The experience.
And it's one thing to use AI to write a manual or
a thank you letter.
Thank you letter.
Something
but
practical.
when there's things that are affecting our children, the human element, no, you can't outsource that to technology.
No.
You shouldn't, right?
No. No, exactly right.
Well, and that's how children are. They experience life is through experience, through feeling. That's how they learn is through actually, feeling the experience.
And they need connection. Yeah. So I think it's great, Debbie, that you and the SCARS team have some healthy skepticism towards AI because I think when it first came out, you had all these people sort of, this is great, this is wonderful, this is going to change. And people that really thought this would be a good thing, and I'm not saying it won't be, but I think the pendulum is starting to swing the other side, and right now is the opportunity to kind of put in some checks and balances.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Locally, globally, but within your families as well. I mean, that's until we hope government will do stuff. We hope, there'll be legislation, but until then, I think it's on the parents and some of the recommendations here about, limiting the screen time, more unstructured play, and just taking the phones away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so those practical measures, but, first and foremost, you can do all of that, but when you're not around, if you don't have a strong connection with your child where they do feel like they can come to you without ridicule or punishment, they won't come to you. They won't admit it. They'll lie. So it all comes down to the connection you have with your kids.
And they'll keep those secrets. They won't feel like if someone has done something or sent them something, they're just not going to feel comfortable sharing that with you.
No.
It's a bit of bullying too. I mean, a little bit if someone's, bullying them online. I mean, we've talked about this in our other show, Survivor Hour. Listen, parents, pay attention, please. Please develop that relationship with your child. Know where your children are going. Put that parental software. Is there software for the prevention of AI?
Not really, but there is sort of software that you can use to sort of track and monitor what your kids are doing. And again, the Thorn website, I would defer to them. They would, and Common Sense Media, they would have the best recommendations.
Yeah. Because this could have detrimental effects for years and years on our kids. And then they're going to grow up thinking, who can I trust and what can I trust?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think another thing is, and it's one of those not difficult but more difficult subjects to talk about is as your children get older, the device passwords. So when we did the presentation the other day, we asked the children, do you have access to a device? Do you have any device, iPad, whatever? Most of them said yes. And then, do you have a password on it? Most of them said yes. And then we said, do your parents know your password? And a good bit of them said no.
Wow.
So and it's not that, that's a bad parent, you're horrible because you don't know. Because it's one of those things that if you don't consciously, or if you're not consciously aware about it, you just don't even think about it because, that's the device. Oh, look, I'm cooking dinner. Go over there and watch. Before, when I was younger, if my mom or dad were cooking dinner, they would say, oh, go watch TV. I'm watching Jamie Foxx or Family Matters. I don't have access to somebody who's trying to speak to me. Whereas if I tell the children, listen, Dad's got to go make some food, go over there for a second, and they pick up the device, I'm busy doing what I have to do. So I'm not watching to make sure of what they're doing. So if you don't have the device password, if after I'm finished cooking and we're eating dinner and they lock their device, you can't even go and see what they're doing because, sometimes
100%.
even when my children are sleeping, hope they're not listening, when my children are sleeping, I can go through their devices because I know their passwords. I know that, and some of them are unlocked, so I can go through their devices and even when they're on their games and stuff like that, because I don't want to be that parent that, okay, my dad is a police officer, he didn't let me do nothing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as soon as
You
they
have
get 16, they want to do everything
Yep.
because
Right.
that is so you have to find that balance. So I allow them to do it, but I just explain to them like Roblox is a big thing. Oh, who's that person? Oh, I don't know that. I said, well, don't accept the friend request. You don't know them. Don't accept. Now, who's that person? Oh, that's my brother. Or I would know that brother, but silly. I
Yes,
guess.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
my friend
Yeah.
from school. I
Yeah.
say, okay,
Yeah.
cool, and then I check and see the name, and then. At school, I'll say, hey, does your son play Roblox? Is his name? So, oh, yeah, that's my son. So at least
Do your-
for sure that child who he's playing with is actually his school friend from school.
Right.
So it seems like it's a lot of work, and being a parent is a lot of work. But
Yeah.
it's just so many different factors to have to consider now that before 20 years ago you didn't have to consider all of these factors.
And don't
Yeah.
look at it as snooping. I was talking to
Yeah.
a mom, and
Yeah.
and I said, do you have your son's password? Because my sons are tricky, and they'll keep changing their passwords,
Yeah.
and I'm still trying to. And she's like, well, no. She's like, it's their diary. It's like we would all have those diaries in the '80s with the
Yeah.
lock. And,
Yep.
stuff. And I said, no, it's not, because a diary was one way. This is two way. And I think
Yes,
that was
exactly.
sort of the
Yeah.
aha moment. And so just keep
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
trying to get
Yeah.
to
And that
progress.
diary would be in their bedroom
Yeah.
on the bottom drawer where nobody
Right.
knew where it was. And now,
nobody,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nobody
is
has
not-
access
Yeah.
to that
Yeah,
information.
exactly.
Yeah.
This is a
Everyone.
live tool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can even kind of manage that as well because he might have it in his notes app, for example. So you might open the notes app and see that his writing stuff. You might look into that. But if you're going on his social media and you see chats between him and somebody, Jimmy, in California, you're like, well, hey, who's Jimmy? So
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. It
Yeah.
is, you want them to have some ability to share their own private thoughts. But then
But
again,
still.
it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
If you're opening a chat and seeing them talking to somebody, then that's different than dear diary. I
Yeah.
had a hard day today.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what's that age cutoff, you think, where a parent then doesn't look at their devices? Do you think there is, or you know what I'm saying? Like, does it stop at 14 or 15 or 16 or is it 18 or is it, when do we kind of go, okay, I don't need to look at this device anymore. I know you get it. Is there a certain age where the brain, where the child understands the risk and the dangers, or
No.
not really?
So long as they're even through high school, the brain is not fully developed yet, and there's always going to be, whilst we expect them to know right from wrong, you have to understand their emotional development isn't such that they've had enough experience to actually know the consequences, to read into people, to read people well enough to know what their intentions are, especially as they're developing and their confidence is developing too. So is through high school, obviously you can't do it when they're in college. And by then you hope that they're going to make good decisions for themselves. But you're better off making a child angry with you at 8 to prevent anything from happening, to be proactive,
Yeah.
than to wait until something happens and then you have to be reactive.
Yeah. And I mean, technically speaking, in Bermuda, you're considered a child until you're 18.
Right.
So,
And even
technically
then,
speaking,
the
yeah.
brain's not fully
Yeah,
developed
exactly,
yet, right?
exactly.
So-
But I mean,
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
But even still, like you said, you can still. I would say it's don't ever stop trying. At least, I mean,
Yes.
obviously, when they go 18 and move out on their own, you can't say, "Hey, come stop by my
yeah.
house. I'm going to check your phone as
Yeah.
you're going home from your job." But
Yeah,
it's
because
just
you
a
want them
matter
to,
of-
you want to
Yeah.
respect privacy,
Right,
but
right,
when
right.
they're a child,
They're your
I love
responsibility.
you. I care about
Yeah.
you. I know what the dangers and the risks are out there.
Yeah.
And I would say also, I love what you said about, was it in Australia where having devices, they can't have a device.
They can't be on social media without
Social media.
verified parental consent. So the onus is on the parents that they've read all the disclaimers, they've said this is okay for my child, and the consent is fair. So it's not just my
Right.
kid forging my name on a
Yeah.
device.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have my children's devices set up where if they try to access something, I have to give it permission to allow them to download.
That's
So-
good.
Wow.
That's
yeah.
good.
What's
Yeah.
that app?
Well, I have all shameless plug, but I have all Apple devices, so
Apple.
it's
Oh,
built
it's
into
shared,
the Apple.
yeah. Yes.
So everything is shared. So if they want to, I set up the iPads under my name and Adam as a child, and then any permissions have to come through my. So I'll get a notification on my phone to say, oh, they want to do this.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
one
parents.
of the ways.
See, my girls are older now, so but I'd be taking notes right now.
Yeah. I mean, that must
Yeah.
relieve a lot of anxiety on your part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously they're smart, so I think my older son knows how to turn it off now. But it's just a matter of
Yeah.
making sure
Yeah.
that we put those in, and that they want to have those conversations and they can share stuff with us.
Yeah.
I love that. And the other thing is we as parents, talk to our children about not pressuring other children if their parents have rules that your parent doesn't. We have to respect parents' rules because some parents may not give their child a device until they're 12. They might hold off for a few years for whatever reason. They're just not ready for that big step. But, the child gets the peer pressure from the other children. Oh, you don't have a cell phone. Oh,
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
parents are strict.
Yep.
We got to, it's
Debbie,
like sleepovers.
which is why let's take the phones out of the schools.
Correct, yeah,
I think
yeah.
that is,
Yes.
I
Yes.
I think that's the first step to at least have a level playing field in the school so the kids aren't feeling they need to keep up. They can focus on school and they don't have the entire world in
why
their
do they
pocket.
need that? Why do they need that? I
don't
just
know.
have a
Yeah.
question. Why would a school say that a child needs that phone? If there's an emergency, you go to the office.
Exactly. If there's an emergency, you should be going
You
to
should
the office.
you should be going to the office. And if a child tells a parent, "I don't feel comfortable going to the office," then the parent asks the child, "Why do you not feel comfortable?" But I know most of the schools I've visited, the person in the office has this kind, sweet, caring face, and so if a child's feeling fearful, wants to talk to their parent, I cannot see any school in this country saying no to a child. You can't call your parent if you're feeling. So why else would they need the phone? I just want to know.
Well, I think for it's probably a parental pressure to then suggest
wanna
to
be
their children,
reachable.
I want to have access to my child, or want them to have access to me, and so because there's probably again obviously never been any significant consequences or anything happen as a result yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not been enforced.
I mean, I can see, if a child in school is feeling bullied and a parent and is scared and a parent doesn't feel the school is doing the right thing, or a sporting organization or whatever it is, after school, whatever, then the parent might feel some hypertension that what if something's happening and I can't get to my child, right?
Yeah.
If that,
So
that
it's
fear.
access. Yeah.
It's
They
access.
want access.
The parent wants that access. But then I would say if they take the devices away from children in school, then the parent has to develop that relationship, or at least start talking to somebody else about, wait a minute, I'm
That's a
not
bigger
feeling.
problem.
That's a bigger problem. That's
Yeah.
another problem. Get some support around you to say, I'm not feeling comfortable with what's going on in this situation, and build that support. But that a phone shouldn't be the reason, because it's a distraction, quite frankly.
Absolutely. And they're posting on social media even in between classes,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah.
But it's taking away from their learning, and it's also putting them at risk, and it's affecting their
Ability to learn, because they keep getting
absolutely.
interrupted in,
So
focus.
parents, this is on us. I mean,
Yeah.
talk to your PTA, talk to the admin. Some schools on the island have some great rules around it. Some not so much. We won't get into it, but ask your school what their rules are around technology, and there might be different for younger kids and older kids.
Yeah,
but-
and they can have their device when they leave at 3, because maybe they have to
Sure,
walk to the bus
yeah,
station, and the parent
absolutely.
wants. I know I would. I
Yeah.
want to know that my child got to where they needed to go safely, and that's our form of communication now, everyone. But wait till after school's finished.
Absolutely. My son goes to work, and they're not allowed to have the phone out during school at all. But after school, when they need to call the parents to pick them up, they can. They just came
love
back
that.
Yeah.
from a school trip, and the school collected all the phones and talk to each other, interact with each
Yeah.
other, and they got a half hour of phone time a day. And I thought, how wonderful is
Yeah.
that? Because
Yeah.
we're creating those social connections.
And they'll follow the rules if you
Exactly.
implement
Yeah,
them.
Yes, and the school should also be communicating to the child that if you ever feel nervous or scared, or we'll come to the office and we will call your parent together. You can call your parent
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
give that child that
Yeah.
assurance.
Well, and you want the child to then feel like they can utilize the resources at school and trust that the school will do something. But if you rescue the school from, helping this child, then you're not instilling the trust for the child in the school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a different world now.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
when you think about it, well, I didn't go to
Yeah.
school with cell phones. I mean, you know, you waited till 3:30, and then I caught the bus, and nobody even knew if I was on the bus or not on the bus. But we live in a dangerous world. I mean, we have to say it's more. You know, we have more risks out there, right?
Yeah.
Than when we went to. I mean, I'm older than all of you, but when I went to school, I had to walk
Yeah.
from the bus stop, you know, by Mermaid Beach up to Khyber Pass, up this, you know, windy road. But now, and I think there were predators then.
Yeah.
It's not that predators didn't exist, because we know we got a lot of survivors in this country. But yeah, I mean, we want to make sure our children are safe.
Yeah. And, you know, again, I think it's very healthy for parents to let their children know that, you know, periodically and randomly I'm going to be checking. So, you know, so they'll never know when you're going to check.
Yeah.
But you're not going to check every single hour of every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I'm checking because I love you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I want to make sure you're protected. And I know what the dangers are out there. It's not because I'm prying. It's because I care about you and I love you. And I want to make sure you're always safe. Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, Debbie, would you use the analogy, you know, the same reason I put a seatbelt in
Yes.
you in the car?
Yeah.
Like, would that kind of be
Yes.
a good way to? Okay.
Absolutely. Just like
That's
you put
great.
the seat.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
a great analogy,
Okay. That
is a
actually,
great
Priya.
analogy.
You know, and
It's hard because it's hard to, especially when you have teenagers, to kind of you want to give them their agency, but you do want to keep them safe, and there's this tension, right?
Yeah, yeah, and one of our past chairman, John, I remember him, you know, giving an analogy, and it was a great analogy. And it's like, I'm not going to give a stranger my wallet with pictures of you in it. Why am I going to let someone have access to pictures of you? I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give my
Correct.
wallet with my personal pictures of. You know, that's a great analogy when
Yeah.
you're using that, right? Because we all have pictures of our children in our wallet, and I thought that was a great analogy as well. We're not just going to give access to anybody,
Anybody,
for
yeah.
our precious treasures.
Yeah.
It's not good. Well, everyone, thank you so much, Chief Inspector Kenton Trott. We're just so grateful to you and the whole entire Vulnerable Persons Unit of the Bermuda Police Service. Thank you for your service
Yes,
to this
you're very
country,
welcome. You're very
and making sure our little ones are safe. Thank you, Priya, for all that you do and opening my eyes to AI.
Yeah.
You know, grateful to you and your passion for the children in this community.
Thank you.
And your work. And tell us about the company that you work with, Niche.
Oh, sure. So I am the managing director of Niche Communications. We're a Bermuda-owned communications strategic planning and marketing firm. And so we do a lot of work with early years, schools, but a lot of our work is also AI augmentation and AI training. If I could give a plug
Please
for
do.
another organization that I'm involved with, it's a newly launched. We're called the Early Years Nurturing Bermuda Foundation, and our website is www.earlyyearsnurturingbda.org. And we're funded by the Bermuda Foundation, kindly. And what we are is just an organization that is hoping to share resources to help start nurturing relationships from birth, be it access to service providers and on the island, evidence-based research, and just tips and tools on how you can help your little ones. And I want to say thank you so much, Debbie. When I started this project, you really helped me understand the landscape around sexual violence against children here and the constraints and all of that. So thank you for your help on developing that part of the curriculum.
Absolutely. And what is your email address if someone wants to reach you?
Sure. It's Priya at Niche BM, PRIYA at Niche, NICHE.BM.
Thank you, Priya. And Dr. Hancock, what would SCARS do without you? Thank you so much for your wisdom on set. You know, in closing, I once heard this. If you don't know the sender, it might be a pretender. However, you know, with AI, it may trick you into believing the sender is someone you know and is real. And that is the danger. To all our parents and guardians, you are the first line of defense. Please keep those lines of communication open with your little ones and your teens, and make sure you have safeguards in place to ensure their protection. You know, during this show, we discussed the dark side of AI, the dangers they pose on children, and the importance of keeping lines of communication open, and how to be the protector of your child. To report a case of cybercrime, please call Bermuda Police Service at 295-0011 or 211. Remember, to report a case of child sexual abuse, please call Child and Family Service Kids Hotline 278-9111 Or, again, the Bermuda Police Service, 211 or 295-0011. These two agencies, Child and Family Services, and together with the Bermuda Police Service, they investigate child sexual abuse reports. You can also make an anonymous call at 800-8477. For more information, visit our website, scarsbermuda.com. You can go to the tab Resources for Parents. You're going to find videos and websites of resources to assist with cyber safety, such as Thorn, another organization, Child Rescue Coalition, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Our next Survivor Hour show is scheduled for Wednesday, April 2nd at 1:15. On behalf of all of us at SCARS, thank you for spending the last hour with us. Goodbye.
Thank you for tuning in to SCAR Survivor Hour on Power 95. Join us again next month on the first Wednesday at 1:15. Remember, your story matters, and together we can make a difference.